For 27 years, we've been asking, who could take a 6-year-old boy and murder him and decapitate him? Who? We needed to know. We needed to know. And today we know. The not knowing has been a torture, but that journey's over. And a lot of horrible memories.
July 27, 1981, 6-year-old Adam disappeared from a Hollywood mall. His head was found 2 weeks later, 125 miles away, in a canal west of Vero Beach.
I don't know who would do this to a 6-year-old child. I can't conceive of it.
I've been able to help so many victims of crime and their families. But for my family, there's been no justice.
It was supposed to be a quick trip to the mall on a bright Florida summer afternoon. But in just 10 minutes, a mother's world shattered and the landscape of American child safety changed forever. 6-year-old Adam was just playing a video game at Sears. Then, he vanished into thin air. A massive search ensued, but 14 days later, fishermen on the Florida Turnpike made a blood-chilling discovery, floating in the murky canal water. What started as a missing child case morphed into a twisted, horrifying nightmare involving a notorious serial killer, lost evidence, and a severely botched police investigation. The horrifying truth is, he was forced outside that store. No one could have predicted what happened next. It was July 27, 1981, in Hollywood, Florida. The kind of bright, carefree summer day where the biggest worry on a mother's mind was running a few simple errands. Reeve Walsh had brought her 6-year-old son, Adam, to the Sears store inside the bustling Hollywood Mall. Adam was wearing his favorite green shorts and a beige boat captain's hat, looking like a picture of innocence. He was a sweet, incredibly shy kid, deeply attached to his parents. Like most children that summer, he was captivated by the new Atari 2600 display setup right in the middle of the toy department. A group of older boys was already gathered around the screen, taking turns on the coveted game. Adam, fascinated, asked his mom if he could stay and watch while she looked for a lamp that was on sale. The lamp section was literally just 3 aisles away. It was a crowded store in the middle of the day, with security guards patrolling and a police station directly across the street. In an era long before parents worried about losing sight of their children for even a second, Reeve smiled and said yes. She promised she would be right back, but what no one knew was that those next 10 minutes would alter the course of American history. When Reeve returned to the toy aisle, just minutes later, the Atari display was completely empty. The older boys were gone, and Adam was nowhere to be found. At first, there was just mild concern. Reeve searched the immediate area, expecting to see his beige captain's hat popping up behind a rack of clothes. But as the minutes ticked by, that mild concern twisted into a suffocating, frantic panic. She ran to a store manager demanding answers. Store employees began paging Adam over the intercom, while Rev and her mother-in-law, who coincidentally was also shopping there, desperately scoured every inch of the massive department store. This is where the story takes a dark turn, uncovering a fatal chain of events that still haunts investigators today. According to police reports, a minor argument had broken out among the older boys at the Atari display. A 17-year-old security guard named Catherine Schaefer was called over to handle the disturbance. Instead of separating the kids or waiting for a parent, she made a decision that would change everything. In her statement to the police, she recounted those final moments. "I asked the older boys if their parents were there. They said no. The youngest one didn't say anything, so I told them all to leave the store." Adam, paralyzingly shy and likely terrified of getting in trouble, never spoke up to say his mother was just a few aisles over. He was ushered out through a different exit, one he wasn't familiar with, leaving him alone outside the mall. When the Hollywood police were finally called at 1:55 p.m., almost 2 agonizing hours had passed. 2 hours of lost time? I gotta be honest with you, the thought of that little boy standing outside those doors, confused and waiting for his mom, breaks my heart. Does this kind of tragic misunderstanding make your blood boil too? Let me know below. The nightmare was only just beginning. The clock was ticking, but the urgency felt entirely one-sided. When the Hollywood Police Department finally arrived at the mall, the sun was still high, and there was still a very real chance to lock down the surrounding area. But that didn't happen. In 1981, the concept of a stranger abducting a child in broad daylight from a crowded public place was almost unimaginable to local law enforcement. Instead of sounding massive alarms, setting up roadblocks, or immediately treating it as a critical kidnapping, the initial response was agonizingly sluggish. Authorities largely viewed Adam as a lost child who had simply wandered off. Or worse, they classified the situation under the umbrella of a runaway. A 6-year-old boy terrified and alone does not simply run away from a toy aisle and vanish without a trace. I gotta be honest with you, it makes my blood boil to think about how much precious time was squandered in those critical first few hours, because the system simply didn't know how to handle a missing child. How would you feel if the people meant to protect your family just brushed off your worst nightmare? Let me know your thoughts below. As the sun began to set over Florida, casting long, dark shadows across the mall's parking lot, the devastating reality set in for John and Rev Walsh. Their little boy was out there in the dark, refusing to wait helplessly for a small-town police department to escalate the situation. John and Rev took matters into their own hands. They transformed their agonizing fear into frantic action, printing hundreds, and soon hundreds of thousands, of flyers. Adam's smiling face, captured in a recent photograph, wearing his little baseball uniform, was suddenly plastered on every storefront, telephone pole, and windshield across Broward County. The family even managed to scrape together a $100,000 reward.
Believe that somehow we'll reach the people that have Adam, and they'll realize that we don't want to hurt them, or we don't want to prosecute, and maybe they'll realize that, you know, how much hurt they've caused by taking Adam, and maybe they'll let him go somewhere.
At Hollywood Police Headquarters, detectives are trying to locate the woman who matches the composite drawing. Flyers about Adam are all over Dade and Broward counties and even Canada. Donations to help find Adam has grown to $120,000. Reva Walsh had a message for anyone who may have Adam in their custody.
We would donate any money they needed to help themselves or to help their problem. But we know Adam needs to be home, and Adam will never have a grudge against anyone that was kind to him.
Mel Taylor, Newswatch.
The local community rallied, conducting massive ground searches, but the chaotic nature of the investigation only added to the psychological torture. The tip lines began to ring, but the voices on the other end often brought nothing but cruel, false hope. People claimed to have seen suspicious vans, or a boy matching Adam's description in neighboring towns, sending desperate parents and under-resourced officers on exhausting wild goose chases. Every dead end was another dagger to the heart. By the second week, sheer desperation pushed the Walsh family onto the national stage as they tried to bypass the local red tape and reach the masses. On the morning of August 11th, 1981, a visibly shattered John Walsh appeared on Good Morning America, broadcasting his plea to millions of viewers. Fighting back tears, his voice trembling with a father's raw, unfiltered agony, he looked directly into the camera and said,
"He's our only child. He's a beautiful little boy, and we just want him back more than anything. We have hope, and we'll never give up hope, and we'll never stop searching."
They were doing everything humanly possible, clinging to the fragile belief that their innocent boy would somehow walk back through their front door. But little did they know, the nightmare was only just beginning. 14 agonizing days had passed since 6-year-old Adam vanished from the toy aisle. That's 2 full weeks of sleepless nights, relentless searching, and desperate prayers for John and Reeve Walsh. They had exhausted every lead and clung to every fragile shred of hope. But the tragic answer to their prayers wouldn't come from a ringing phone or a heroic police rescue. It would come from a desolate, quiet stretch of highway, nearly 130 miles north of their home in Hollywood. On the humid morning of August 10th, 1981, 2 men set out early for a peaceful day of fishing. They drove to a remote drainage canal running alongside the Florida Turnpike, right around mile marker 130, in Indian River County. The area was quiet, isolated, and surrounded by thick brush and dark, murky water. As they walked along the muddy bank, scanning the surface to find the perfect spot to cast their lines, one of the men noticed something pale bobbing in the water. At first glance, they desperately prayed it was just discarded debris or an old baby doll. But as they stepped closer, the horrific reality of what they had stumbled upon sent absolute chills down their spines. Panic-stricken, they rushed to contact the authorities. The chilling dispatch recording from the Indian River Police captures the exact moment the nightmare became undeniably real.
2 weeks after he vanished, fishermen found the boy's decapitated head in a canal more than 100 miles away. The rest of his body was never found.
The next of kin is being notified at this point in time.
When investigators arrived and secured the grim scene, they made a heartbreaking discovery that confirmed everyone's worst fears. Extensive dive teams scoured the difficult alligator-infested waters for days, desperately searching the surrounding area for any other signs of the little boy. But they uncovered absolutely nothing else. The medical examiner was tasked with the devastating duty of identification, comparing dental records to the remains. A single filling on a lower left molar provided the final tragic confirmation. It was Adam. The news hit John and Reeve Walsh with an unimaginable, crushing force. For 14 days, they had held on to the belief that their shy, sweet boy was out there, alive and waiting to be brought home. Now, they were forced to confront a reality so exceptionally cruel that it defies all human comprehension. They weren't just told that their beloved son was gone. They had to live with the agonizing trauma that only a small fragment of him had been returned to them. I gotta be honest with you, I cannot even begin to fathom the suffocating dark grief of a parent receiving that kind of phone call. It is a level of devastation that permanently shatters a soul. Does thinking about the sheer cruelty of that moment break your heart too? Let me know in the comments below. And if you appreciate how we handle these sensitive, important cases, please take a second to hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us keep bringing light to these stories. The search for a missing boy was tragically over. But little did they know, the hunt for a monster was about to spiral into a maddening web of lost evidence and false leads. With the tragic confirmation of Adam's death, the desperate search for a missing boy abruptly transformed into a massive, high-stakes homicide investigation. But instead of a coordinated, laser-focused manhunt, the Hollywood Police Department found themselves completely overwhelmed by an avalanche of chaotic information. Thousands of tips flooded the phone lines, sending exhausted detectives chasing down endless dead ends. The investigation quickly became a convoluted web of false leads, with desperate citizens reporting every suspicious vehicle or transient in South Florida. The sheer volume of noise was deafening, masking the sinister truth that was slipping right through their fingers. Amidst the chaos, a deeply chilling red herring emerged that still fuels intense debate today. Eyewitnesses at the mall reported seeing a strange man hanging around the toy department, and others claimed they saw a struggling child being forced into a blue delivery van. It was later discovered that one of the most notorious figures in criminal history, Jeffrey Dahmer, was living in Miami Beach at the exact same time. He was working at a local sub shop just 20 minutes away from the Hollywood Mall, and that specific sub shop utilized blue vans for their deliveries. The eerie coincidences were undeniably spine-chilling. However, when confronted by investigators years later, Dahmer flatly denied any involvement. He maintained that he had already confessed to all of his other horrifying crimes, stating he had absolutely no reason to hide this one. While the Dahmer theory clouded the narrative, the true tragedy of the investigation lay inside the walls of the police department itself. This is where the story takes a dark turn into unforgivable negligence. Eventually, detectives zeroed in on a drifter who quickly became their prime suspect. During the investigation, authorities seized his vehicle to sweep for clues. When forensic teams processed the car, they made a massive breakthrough. Using luminol, they discovered a significant, undeniable bloodstain soaked deep into the floor carpet of the vehicle. In a case built entirely on circumstantial whispers and hearsay, this stained carpet was the holy grail, the single piece of physical evidence that could definitively secure a conviction in a court of law. But what happened next is almost too infuriating to comprehend. The carpet was removed, reportedly sent out for analysis, transferred between departments, and then, inexplicably, it vanished. The police department literally lost the bloody carpet. They lost the prime suspect's vehicle records and other critical items. They lost the only tangible forensic links to the most high-profile crime in the country, effectively destroying any immediate chance of a trial. I gotta be honest with you, it is absolutely mind-boggling how a piece of evidence that crucial could just disappear into thin air. Does this level of gross incompetence make your blood boil too? Drop your take in the comments below, because the frustration is incredibly hard to stomach. Without the physical proof, prosecutors were paralyzed. The pursuit of justice was stopped dead in its tracks due to bureaucratic failure. No one could have predicted what happened next, but the agonizing wait for answers was about to take an even more twisted turn. For over 2 years, the Hollywood Police Department chased shadows. The investigation was bogged down by lost evidence, endless false leads, and the suffocating weight of a family's unresolved grief. But in October 1983, a sudden chilling breakthrough emerged from a prison cell hours away. A transient drifter named Otis Toole, who was already incarcerated for other crimes, began speaking to investigators, and what he casually admitted to would freeze the blood in their veins. Toole, a man with a long, sinister criminal history and a notoriously low IQ, officially confessed to the abduction and murder of 6-year-old Adam Walsh. According to the police transcripts, Toole sat in the interrogation room and calmly recounted the events of that fateful July afternoon. He claimed he had been driving his white 1971 Cadillac through the area and pulled up near the exterior doors of the Hollywood Mall. That was when he spotted a small boy in a beige captain's hat, standing entirely alone outside the Sears entrance. Adam, having just been ushered out by the security guard, was likely confused, terrified, and desperately waiting for his mother to come looking for him. This is where the story takes a dark turn, revealing the absolute true horror of a predator's mind. Toole didn't use force to get Adam into the car. Instead, he used the oldest, most insidious trick in the book. He approached the frightened 6-year-old and lured him into the Cadillac with the simple, deceptive promise of toys and candy. Adam, a deeply shy child who was lost and seeking comfort, innocently trusted the wrong person and got into the vehicle. As Toole drove north onto Interstate 95, heading toward Jacksonville, he noted that Adam was initially docile. The little boy likely believed this strange man was going to help him find his parents. But as the highway miles stretched on and the landscape grew unfamiliar, the devastating reality set in. Adam realized they were not going back to the mall. Panic consumed the child. He began to cry, demanding to go back to his mother. When recounting what happened next, Toole's chilling lack of remorse deeply disturbed even the most hardened detectives. He admitted to pulling the Cadillac off the highway onto a deserted, isolated service road near the Florida Turnpike to silence the boy. Out of respect for Adam's memory and his family, we will not delve into the heartbreaking specific details of his final moments on that desolate dirt road. But Toole's cold, emotionless description of how he ended an innocent child's life simply because the boy was crying is a level of twisted evil that is hard to comprehend. I gotta be honest with you, thinking about how easily a monster can manipulate a frightened, lost child is absolutely blood-chilling. It is the literal embodiment of every parent's worst nightmare. Does hearing how coldly he calculated this abduction make your blood boil too? Drop your take in the comments below. The confession seemed to finally bring the agonizing mystery to a close. But the nightmare was far from over, as the killer was about to unleash a twisted psychological game that would deny the family justice.
Reading the case files, it is obvious why Otis Toole has been a key suspect in the murder of Adam Walsh for 12 years. After he was convicted of arson in a Jacksonville courtroom in 1983, Toole said he wanted to talk about a murder he'd committed a few years ago. He told detectives he'd kidnapped a child who said his name was Adam from a Fort Lauderdale area mall. A spur-of-the-moment decision to take the child and raise the child as his own.
The confession should have been the final, definitive chapter in this agonizing saga. With Otis Toole officially on the record, investigators and the Walsh family believed they could finally close the book, head to court, and secure the justice that 6-year-old Adam so deeply deserved. But little did they know, the nightmare was only shifting into a different, far more insidious kind of torture. Toole was not just a transient criminal, he was an erratic, manipulative predator who thoroughly enjoyed the spotlight and reveled in holding power over law enforcement. Almost as soon as the ink dried on his confession, the sickening mind games began. In a cruel display of psychological warfare, Toole initiated a relentless, dizzying cycle of recanting his statements. He would sit in the interrogation room, look detectives dead in the eye, and suddenly claim he had completely fabricated the entire story. He argued that he only confessed because he was bored, or because investigators had inadvertently fed him the details. At one point, he even falsely implicated his infamous partner, serial killer Henry Lee Lucas, sending desperate detectives on yet another wild goose chase, only to later backtrack and insist he acted entirely alone. Then, months later, he would flip the script again, casually readmitting to the crime, and providing unreleased facts that only the true perpetrator could possibly know. This agonizing pendulum of truth and lies inflicted immeasurable pain on John and Reeve Walsh. Every phone call from the police station was another devastating emotional whiplash. This is where the story takes a dark turn into sheer legal frustration. Despite Toole's repeated confessions and the deep, unwavering conviction of the lead detectives, the justice system hit a massive, immovable brick wall. To formally charge someone with a high-profile murder, the state attorney's office requires concrete, physical proof to present to a jury. But because of the catastrophic negligence detailed earlier, the fact that the police department had inexplicably lost the blood-stained carpet from Toole's Cadillac, and the suspected weapon prosecutor's hands were completely tied. Without that crucial physical evidence, any competent defense attorney could easily tear the case apart by pointing to Toole's documented history of false confessions. The authorities were entirely paralyzed. They had their prime suspect, they had his chilling words on tape, yet they could not legally put him on trial for Adam's death. The realization that a known, self-admitted predator could slip through the cracks of justice simply because of a misplaced piece of evidence is absolutely staggering. The ultimate insult to injury came on September 15, 1996. Otis Toole, who was already serving life sentences in a Florida state prison for other unrelated crimes, died of cirrhosis of the liver at the age of 49. He passed away quietly in a prison hospital bed, taking the absolute definitive truth of that July afternoon to his grave. With Toole's death, the door to a criminal trial slammed shut. John and Rave Walsh were permanently stripped of the opportunity to sit in the courtroom and watch the man responsible for their family's destruction stand before a judge. They were robbed of the profound, necessary closure of a guilty verdict. I gotta be honest with you, seeing a family fight so tirelessly, only to be denied their day in court because the system fumbled the evidence, is profoundly infuriating. It feels like the ultimate betrayal of a grieving family. Drop your take in the comments. Does this monumental failure of justice make your blood boil too? The death of Otis Toole could have been the bitter, unresolved end of this horrific story. A family permanently broken, a killer entirely unpunished, and a bureaucratic system that completely failed an innocent little boy. But John and Rave Walsh refused to let their son's legacy be defined by the darkness of the monster who took him. Instead, they took their unimaginable grief, their furious outrage, and forged it into an absolute, unstoppable weapon for change. They decided that if they couldn't save their own sweet boy, they were going to spend the rest of their lives saving everyone else's. At the time of Adam's disappearance in 1981, the United States had no national database for missing children, no coordinated communication between state police departments, and no central organization to guide terrified parents through their darkest hours. The system was fundamentally broken, so the Walshes built a new one. In 1984, channeling their profound heartbreak into fierce, relentless advocacy, they were instrumental in founding the NCMEC. This groundbreaking organization became an instant lifeline, revolutionizing how law enforcement tracks and recovers abducted youth across the country. But they didn't stop there. Knowing that Adam's nightmare began in the aisles of a crowded retail store, their tragedy inspired the creation of the highly effective Code Adam safety protocol. Today, if a child goes missing in a participating supermarket or department store, a Code Adam is announced over the intercom, immediately locking down the building and mobilizing every single employee to secure the exits. It is a brilliant, immediate response that has thwarted countless abductions before a predator could even reach the parking lot. Their relentless crusade eventually reached the highest levels of the United States government. In the summer of 2006, a monumental piece of legislation was signed into federal law, the Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Act. This sweeping mandate drastically expanded the National Offender Registry, severely tightened the penalties for violent crimes against youth, and gave law enforcement the robust tools they desperately needed. Because of Adam, the landscape of child safety in America was permanently transformed. Yet even with these massive national victories, a painful shadow still hung over Hollywood. The case officially remained open, serving as a haunting reminder of the botched initial investigation. Finally, on December 16, 2008, 27 agonizing years after that fateful summer day, the Hollywood Police Department held a highly emotional press conference. The chief of police stood before John and Rave Walsh and issued a formal, deeply belated apology for the department's catastrophic missteps decades earlier. More importantly, they officially closed the Adam Walsh case, definitively concluding that Otis Toole was the sole murderer. There was no trial, but the formal public acknowledgement provided a profound sense of validation. It was an admission that the family had been right all along. Adam's life was tragically cut short at just 6 years old, but his enduring legacy is absolutely immortal. Because of a shy little boy in a beige captain's hat, Hundreds of thousands of missing children have been safely brought back home to their families. Every time a missing child alert flashes across a highway sign, or a store goes on lockdown to find a wandering toddler, that is Adam Walsh looking out for them. What started as one family's devastating nightmare birthed a movement that quite literally changed the world. Finally, after 27 years of unimaginable pain, the case was closed. Adam's tragic death wasn't in vain. He built an invisible shield around millions of children. Today I'll keep digging if there's more to uncover. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.